Good morning, Murfreesboro Church. The title of the message today is Taking His Children Home. And we'll be talking about what happens after Christ's second coming. When he arrives, the Bible talks about that period of the 1,000 years. We want to talk about what starts those 1,000 years, what happens during the 1,000 years, and what happens at the end. So when the small cloud finally appears on the horizon and Christ returns to this earth, he will not yet restore this planet to a sinless state. He will first destroy the ungodly and then take with him his living and resurrected children, you and me, I pray, to a safe haven of peace, the New Jerusalem, to watch the final sad unfolding of Earth's history. This actually will be a story of decreation, a reversal of creation. After the planet has been depopulated by Christ's second coming, the earth will regress to its original desolate state. Formless and void, as Jeremiah describes it in a vision of the future in the Old Testament. But the most desolate scenario is drawn up for Satan. The master tempter now will be bound for 1,000 years to a place in which no one is alive to tempt, which is almost the ultimate penalty for him. 1,000 years is a long time to bear the sins of the world, which at this moment are being placed on Satan. This was symbolically portrayed in the Day of Atonement, when all the sins were transferred to Azazel, the scapegoat that was chosen and sent off to the desert to die. At the end of this period of time, the millennium, the final showdown between good and evil will take place. And the New Jerusalem, as the New Jerusalem descends from heaven, you and I might be watching from above as Satan tries to once more mobilize all his dark powers to lead the people into a useless battle that, because of Calvary, is doomed to failure. There will be no real war. Instead, merciful fire from God will consume the remainder of sin, and this universe will be cleansed of sin for all eternity. So we're going to open our Bibles in Revelation chapter 19. Starting from verse 11, it describes Christ coming from heaven, and describes Christ riding out of heaven on a white horse, and he's followed by the armies of heaven. And let's read verse 11. Now I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse, and he who sat on him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he judged and makes war. Verse 14, and the armies in heaven, clothed in fine linen, white and clean, followed him on white horses. Their purpose is to make war with the kings of the earth and their armies. Chapter 19 concludes with the enemies of Christ being defeated. This symbolic description of the second coming of Christ is immediately followed by the 1,000 years in chapter 20 of the book of Revelation. From this, it's evident that Christ's second coming will occur at the beginning of the millennium. The other thing that happens is the resurrection of all the righteous. In 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 16, Paul said that the Lord himself will come down from heaven with a loud command, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trumpet call of God. And the dead in Christ will rise first. That's a verse that most of us memorize. Thus, one of the events that occur at the beginning of the millennium will be the resurrection of the righteous. Then in the next verse, Paul adds, "He who are still alive and are left will be caught up together with them," the resurrected saints, "in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so we will be with the Lord forever." This suggests that God's people will be taken to heaven at Christ's second coming. And a statement from Jesus that he made while he was still on earth confirms this conclusion. We find this in John chapter 14, verses 2 and 3. Jesus says, "I am going there," so to heaven, "to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back," so that's his second coming, "and take you to be with me, that you may also be where I am." So Jesus is now in heaven, and he promises that at his second coming, he would take his people with him to where he is. So we have the resurrection of the righteous, and then we also have the destruction of the wicked. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, verse 9, Paul says that at Christ's second coming, the wicked will be punished with everlasting destruction and shut out from the presence of the Lord. And in the symbolic description of Christ going to war against the kings of the earth and their armies, Revelation 19:18 says that the birds of the air will eat the flesh of the kings, the generals, and mighty men, and the flesh of all the people, free and slave, great and small. From this, it's evident that the wicked will be slain at Christ's second coming. And Satan will also be bound during the 1,000 years. In Revelation 20, verse 2 and 3, it says that an angel from heaven seized the dragon, the ancient serpent, who is the devil, or Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years. He threw him into the abyss and locked and sealed it over him to keep him from deceiving the nations anymore until 1,000 years were ended. The word abyss, sometimes is translated as bottomless pit, is used here to describe the pre-creation condition of the earth. It was formless and empty. Revelation simply here is stating that during the millennium, Satan will be confined to the desolate earth with no one to tempt. The book of Revelation also says that at Christ's second coming, the entire world will be shaken by an earthquake that is so powerful, and we find this in Revelation chapter 6 and chapter 16. The earthquake is so powerful that will cause the mountains to flatten out and the islands in the sea to disappear. An earthquake that powerful would collapse all the skyscrapers of the cities, of large cities, would buckle and destroy all of the world's highways and rail lines. In other words, the earth will be a total wreck, formless and empty. Some Christians claim that Christ will reign on the earth during the millennium, and that the righteous and the wicked will live side by side during that time. We disagree with that for two main reasons. First, there isn't the slightest evidence in the New Testament that the righteous and the wicked will live together after Christ's second coming. To the contrary, in the parable of the sheep and the goats, Jesus said that at his second coming, the righteous and the wicked will be separated from each other, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. Matthew 25 and Matthew 13. And second, the wicked will have all perished in the earthquake we just described, and the righteous, on the other hand, will be in heaven. In Revelation 20, it says that all the righteous will be given authority to judge. They will be priests of God and of Christ, and will reign with him for 1,000 years. So this is a good place to transition from the beginning of the millennium to what happens in between. Revelation chapter 20 continues in verses 4 and 6 to tell us that the righteous will be given authority to judge. Other verses in the New Testament give us some idea of the nature of this judgment. Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 6 said that the saints will judge the world and we will judge angels. Also, Jesus said in Matthew 19:28 that when the Son of Man sits on his glorious throne, you who have followed me will also sit on 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. In this verse, Jesus combined both the idea of reigning with him and judging that John spoke about in Revelation 20. It is interesting to note that God will wipe away all the tears after the millennium when this planet is recreated into a new earth. The 1,000-year period, therefore, actually represents a time of reflection on God's judgment. A few humbling surprises could also be waiting for us as we meet some unexpected citizens of the eternal city. Manasseh, one of the worst king of Judah during the Old Testament times, who repented and returned to God toward the end of his life, would probably be a good candidate for a surprise as he runs into the prophet Isaiah, which Manasseh probably put to death before his conversion. And each one of us also be prepared for a few surprises ourselves. And this is an important part of judgment in which the Creator once more makes himself accountable to his creatures and gives a transparent explanation of every sentence he has passed. All the unanswered questions that we have now will finally find answers. In this way, God's children are involved in the judgment process and will come to the realization that the Lord's sentences are based wholly on his eternal principles of love and justice. Sometimes it's necessary to take a step back and look at an issue from a distance to get the right perspective. And the millennium is such a step back, away from planet Earth, but the issues are now being viewed from within the safe walls of the heavenly Jerusalem in order to understand truly what damage sin has done to the world and to the lives of humankind. Understanding in the biblical sense is limited not just to a mental exercise. It involves a relationship experience that can be found only in close proximity with Christ. From what we've already learned, we can draw several conclusions about what will happen during the millennium. So, for one, Satan will be confined to the earth, where he can spend the time contemplating the terrible mess he's made of all things. The bodies of the wicked will be covering all the earth, and the righteous will be in heaven reviewing the judgments that God has passed. Well, let's talk about what happens after that period of time concludes. At the end of the millennium, even though that it's a long period of time, and it will be 1,000 years here on Earth. Sometimes I wonder personally how the righteous will get a sense of that time in heaven. That verse keeps coming to mind that says that for God 1,000 years is like a day, and a day like 1,000 years. It makes me wonder if 1,000 years for the righteous will be just like a day, whereas down here Satan is actually experiencing 1,000 years. At the end of the millennium, all the wicked will be resurrected. Revelation 25:20, verse 5 says, the rest of the dead, the wicked, did not come to life, but were not resurrected until the 1,000 years were ended. Verse 7 says that when the 1,000 years are over, Satan will be released from his prison. What does this mean? Verse 3 said that Satan was locked in the abyss to keep him from deceiving the nations anymore until the 1,000 years were ended. The reason why Satan cannot tempt anyone during the millennium is because the righteous are in heaven and the wicked are all dead. There will be no one to tempt. At the close of the millennium, when the wicked are resurrected, there will be once again people to join him in his rebellion against God. This is what we understand to be Satan's release from prison to mean. In Revelation 21, verse 2, John says that he saw the holy city, the New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God. In Revelation chapter 20, verse 9, John says that he saw the wicked surrounding the camp of God's people, the city he loves. This city is the New Jerusalem, so the descent of the New Jerusalem to earth will occur simultaneously as the wicked are resurrected and Satan is released from his prison. In Revelation chapter 20, verse 8, Satan gathers the wicked for battle, and they try to attack the New Jerusalem at this point. Satan has not abandoned the purpose he has pursued. Throughout the history of the planet, his purpose is to defeat God and make his ruleship of the world permanent. However, God will interrupt Satan's strategy. In Revelation chapter 20, verses 11 and 12, John said, I saw a great white throne and him who was seated on it, and I saw the dead, great and small, standing before the throne, and the books were opened. The dead were judged according to what they had done, as recorded in the books. This scene also reveals the reason why the wicked are raised to life after the millennium, so they can be judged for their evil deeds and condemned once and for all. It's interesting, and at this point, what's happening, right? Once the wicked get resurrected, and everybody, if you take a moment to think about the scale of, at that point in time, everybody that's ever lived or has ever existed will be alive at the same time. So can you imagine all the wicked are on earth, and everybody, all the righteous are in the city. That's everybody, like for all time. So the whole humanity is alive at that moment. Following the judgment of the wicked, they will be destroyed in the lake of fire. However, Peter also describes this lake of fire, and he says that the earth itself will be burned up. Thus, hell is not off in some distant part of the universe, or it's not in the center of the earth, and it's not happening right now. Hell will be the destruction of the entire planet by fire at the end of the millennium. The lake of fire in Revelation 20, verse 14 and 15 is followed immediately by the recreation of our planet into a new heaven and a new earth. Peter used the very same language when, after describing the destruction of the world by fire, he said that there will be a new heaven and a new earth, the home of the righteous. Some people argue that the wicked will burn in hell throughout eternity. However, since hell and the lake of fire that destroys the earth are one and the same, hell cannot last forever if the world is to be recreated as the home of the righteous. So, the good news about the millennium is that at its conclusion, evil will be completely cleansed from the earth and from the universe. All wars, natural disasters, pain, and weeping will be a thing of the past, and God's people will enjoy fellowship with God and Jesus and the angels throughout all eternity. The thing that sets it apart from sets Christianity apart from other religions is the fact that God is not just an abstract concept. Most people find it difficult to understand where we human beings came from, where we are going, and where meaning can be found in life. However, through Jesus Christ, God has shown us what he is like, and he has answered those questions. While returning his divinity, Jesus became in every respect human and lived with us for some 30 years. In those short 30 years, Christianity spread through the Roman Empire. Since then, it has transformed the lives and beliefs and moral structure of billions of people who've encountered Jesus and placed their faith in him. John, in Revelation, says that he saw those who had been slain because of the word of God and the testimony that they had maintained. They called out in a loud voice, "How long, sovereign Lord, holy and true, until you judge the inhabitants of the earth and avenge our blood?" The prophet Daniel heard a similar agonizing question being asked. How long will it take for the vision to be fulfilled? The vision concerning the rebellion that causes desolation? Daniel chapter 8, verse 13. These questions are answered decisively in the closing chapters of the book of Revelation, for they describe Jesus stepping into history a second time. However, when he comes again, Jesus won't be the gentle person described in the Gospels. Revelation 19 shows him riding out of heaven on a white horse with an army of angels behind him, also riding on white horses. The purpose is to destroy all those who have rebelled against him and sought to destroy his people. They have knowingly given their whole lives over to the control of Satan and been driven by Satan's hatred of Christ and his followers. These people are all now slain by Jesus' presence. On the other hand, all of those who have been faithful followers of Jesus will go with him to heaven. Thus the wicked destroyed and the righteous taken from earth. Our planet will be desolate. At the conclusion, I suppose that we have an option of how we want to spend the millennium. We can either be a body covering the earth, or we can spend it inside the city walls of the New Jerusalem in the safety of God's presence. I pray that the Lord bless us all, and that we make plans to be in the group of people that are safe inside those city gates that day. Amen.